Hello everyone. Today we will start using our markers, and afterwards we will render our hand mixer designs that we have done last week. So over here I have T-scale colors, which we will be using as an underlay color, and some colored markers. And I don't have the full range of T markers. I'm getting those odd numbers, which is T1, T3, 5, 7, 9, and the black. So the reason that I didn't get all full range of T colors is that it's unnecessary, because once you apply 2 layers or 3 layers of T1, you will get T2 color, and same with T3. If you apply 2 or 3 layers of T3, you will get T4. So it's not necessary to get all of those markers. I like working with a minimum number of materials, so that's easier to find on your table. So if I had the full range of T-scale markers, probably it will be time consuming to find the right T color on my table. So this way I have a less cluttered table. And then we have, again, same with the colors. I'd like to use minimum number of colors for the same reason, so that I have a cleaner table and it's easier to find the material that I'm looking for. Okay. So we will start with using our grayscale markers, and we will learn about surface transitions and how to achieve them. Basically, in terms of color transitions, gradients, there are 3 types of rendering techniques. The first one is achieving flat colors, flat gray. The other one is creating a smooth, soft gradient. And the third one is creating sharper gradient that has sharp transitions. So we're going to do that right now. So first of all, I will get one of my T colors. Maybe we can use T3. So with T3, I'm going to render a flat gray surface. What I'm doing is, again, I'm using my whole arm when I'm as same as when I'm drawing, and I'm adding the first layer. And I'm adding the second layer right where I did the first line. They're slightly overlapping, not that much. Then if I want to darken this color, I can add the second layer. But I recommend adding the second layer before it gets dry, so it blends nicely. Okay. So as I mentioned, make sure that they're slightly overlapping. Otherwise, if they overlap too much, they will leave that dark line over there, as you can see. So it won't look flat gray area. So there's a difference between this one and that one. As you can see, you have 3 dark lines over there. So my recommendation would be just slightly overlapping them, and then try to render it as fast as you can. Otherwise, if you wait too long, the ink will dry and it won't bleed. It won't create that nice constant look. So I can show you one example over here. I'm waiting till it's dry. Meanwhile, I can practice more here. And then once it's dry, I'm putting the second layer. So as you can see, it creates this sharp line because it was dry and they don't blend nicely. So that's those are the things that you need to know. So again, one more time, when you're rendering it, use your arm and then slightly overlap each line. And if you want to add the second layer to darken further, add that layer before the first layer dries out. Okay, so that's how we're going to achieve flat colors. So yeah, and again, if you look over here, since I waited too long after adding the first row, the first line, and then after a minute I add a couple of seconds later I add the second one. Since it's dry, it left that dark line over there. All right. And now our second type of transition will be surface transition will be smooth transition. Generally, I'm starting with darker color, such as it depends on how dark the object is going to be. Let's say my darkest is going to be T5. And what I'm doing is I'm going to create a transition between T5 till one layer of T1. So first I'm adding the first layer of T5, and then quickly adding the second layer towards the middle, and then adding the third layer up there. And quickly I'm switching to T3 and starting where my T5 was, and then adding the second layer and third layer, and maybe one more layer just to blend those two colors. So that way I will create a smooth transition. So let's practice that one more time. I'm starting with the darkest color. So I'm assuming that in this object the darkest part is T5, and I'm adding the first layer of T5. They are slightly overlapping, and I'm trying to be quick as much as possible. And then quickly adding the second layer towards the middle, and then third layer. And with my T3, I'm starting where that T5 was and adding the first layer, and then second layer and third layer, and maybe a little bit more T3 here so that it blends. So that's how you create a soft transition. But if you want to create a sharp transitions, such as you know, when you're rendering a reflective object, it will work as a mirror. It will reflect these objects nice and crisp, which means you will have to render with a sharp transition, and which means we will apply the technique that we have learned here. We will wait till our markers dry, and then apply the second layer. So we will wait. Meanwhile, we can add the T3. So once it's dry, let's add the second layer. And second layer for T3. And finally the third layer. Alright, as you can see, the transition is over here on the right hand side is much smoother, softer compared to this one. So when you're rendering reflective objects, you will have to wait till the first layer is dry and then apply the second layer afterwards. Whereas if you want to create a softer transition, let's say you're rendering a matte plastic, that means you have to quickly add the first layer, and on top of that you will quickly add the second layer to create smooth transition. And you can overlap your markers, like as I did over here. I overlap T3 with T5 to blend them nicely. All right. So, and on top of this, you can apply the color that you want. Of course, if you're using a dark colors, such as dark orange, then I recommend using darker T-scale colors. But if you're going to render a lighter object, lighter plastic, like as I have here E41, then I recommend using T3 and T1. Whenever you start rendering, before you start rendering, I recommend testing your colors. What you can do is you can get your T1, so that's one layer, two layers, even maybe three layers, and then let's add one layer of T3 and two layers of T3, and T5 as well, one layer of T5 and two layers of T5. Okay. And now we're going to test those gray colors, our underlay colors, with some colored markers. And I'm getting TE41. Getting first layer. I'm getting this orange, bright orange color. And maybe this olive green color, YG91. Right. So as you can see, for the E41, which is a very light color, it works well with T1 and two layers of T3, but with T3, it gets too dark, so it dominates the color. The color is hardly visible. So if you're going to render a plastic object using E41, then I recommend using T1 as an underlay color. And if for the YG91, it's T1, T3, still it's visible, so it darkens the color. And also T3 works well, maybe one layer of T3. But if you're going to darken further, I don't recommend using T5. And with the Chinese orange, the YR09, T1 is hardly visible, so there's no benefit of using T1. It's just a waste of ink. But T3 and T5 works well for that one. So the reason that we're using our grayscale markers as an underlay color is to darken the object further. Instead of using multiple layers of that color, such as I'm applying this one layer and then the second layer and third layer. And as you can see, the transition is hardly visible. They're almost the same. So in order to darken it further, to create more gradient, I'm applying that 3 scale markers as an underlay color. That way my object looks more three-dimensional. Otherwise, what you have to do is you have to get the darker shade of this YR09, such as you can get YR10, a darker orange, but then you have to get that color scheme for every single color. So I have to get YR07, 8, 9, 10, which will just be not quite effective. It will be time consuming to find the materials, and plus it will be very expensive to get all of those markers. Instead, the best technique is using those T1 and T3 and T5 as an underlay color to darken our objects, our colors. In addition to that, what I recommend is putting the gray colors first, then applying the color afterwards. Otherwise, if you use the colored marker first, and then if you apply the grayscale marker on top of that to darken it, which looks nice, it works, it darkens it, but then it will ruin the tip of your pen, and your grayscale marker will be coloring in orange, so it will ruin it. So that is why it's always better to start with grayscale colors and then apply color on top of that. But if you accidentally applied T-scale color on top of a colored surface and ruined the tip, don't worry, you can always change them. They're replaceable. You can remove them and then just get a new one if you want to. Also, while I'm showing how to replace the tip, you can refill this way by removing the tip, and you can get your refill bottle. And then basically just pour the ink. So, which means if you ran out of ink, you don't throw them away, you just get the refill bottle and then remove the tip and refill your marker. So over here it shows, it has indicators, it shows you how much you can fill. This one is like 3 years old, so one bottle will last for like a couple of years. Let's put it back. All right. The other thing is we have T0s. Actually, it's called zero only, and it's called blender. If you want to blend your colors further and create a softer transition, you can get that colorless marker and blend it. Otherwise, you can use one of your lighter colored T-scale colors to blend it, like as I did with here. I'm using T3 to blend it, or you can use T1 to blend it. So let's apply what we have learned on an object over here. So I'm going to quickly sketch a cylinder. So this right side of my cylinder is darker than the left-hand side, which means the light is coming from the left-hand side. And I have to make this part darker. And I'm guessing that the light will hit over here. So, which means I have to create this nice gradient surface, starting from here, darker, and then towards here, it's going to be lighter. Maybe this edge could be slightly darker as well. And I'm going to color it with Chinese orange color. So for that one, T3 and T5 works well. So let's find T5. And I'm starting with the darkest color. I'm adding the first layer of T5, then click the second layer and third layer. I'm adding only one layer of T5 there. And then I'm using T3, adding the second layer and third layer. So towards here it's getting lighter. And I can darken it a bit further by adding a couple more layers here. Then with my orange color, I will add some colors to my object. Towards the edges, I'm adding multiple layers. And I drop its shadow on that surface. And I can use some correction pen or white ink pen to highlight these edges. but this way I will create more matte plastic effect by applying soft transition. But if I want to create more reflective effect, I have to use this technique, and I will have to wait till the first layer is dry, then apply the second layer afterwards. So, and these are the techniques that we will be using when we are rendering our hand mixers. And in my design, I have one part that is made out of glossy plastic. So, and I will be using this technique. And then in some other parts, I have softer transitions, which means I have matte plastic. So, and I will be using this technique. And moreover, I have some flat surfaces, and for flat surfaces, there won't be surface transitions at all. It will be just flat color, and I will be using my marker, this technique that I showed you guys. And before I start my mixer rendering, I will test my colors. I will decide which colors that I'm going to use, and then test them with those underlay colors. So that's basically the introduction part of the markers, and let's go ahead and start rendering our hand mixers. Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we will apply what we have learned in our previous tutorial, and we're going to render hand mixer and apply plastic rendering techniques. So we have some couple of examples over here. So we have this version. I'm using E43, actually E41, and some olive green color YG91. And in this version, I'm using darker colors. And basically, it's going to be a side view, and it's going to have matte plastic and some glossy plastic and a background. So we will apply those techniques as I mentioned in my previous tutorial. So I will start with sketching my hand mixer. Probably I will go for this design right here. So it's a pretty simple form. We have a flat handle that is more rectilinear, and a container where it consists its motor and other components, and it's more like a cylindrical form. So it's a combination of basically a cylinder and a rectangle form. So before I start drawing my design, I'm deciding the direction of the light, and I'm assuming that the light is coming from the top left-hand corner of my blender or mixer. And that means any line that is facing top left-hand side will be the brightest, so it will have a really thin line weight, whereas the ones that are facing on the bottom right-hand side, as you can see over here, I will use a darker color, a thicker line weight. Okay, so these are going to be the lightest lines, and these are going to be darker lines. And as always, our construction lines are going to be the lightest of our drawing. And first, I'm going to decide my center axis of my mixer. So it's going to be slightly tilted, about 15 degrees. So I will go ahead and draw that straight line. So it's, as you can see, it's hardly visible. And then the handle, my handle is going to be maybe close to 90 degrees, but slightly wider than 90 degrees, maybe 100 degrees. So it's going to be going that direction. Okay, maybe I can change the angle of the body. Okay. Again, just remember, when you're drawing a line, always look at your target point, not the tip of your pen. Okay, in the second step, I will design my cylinder part and decide the width of each cylinder. The top part is going to be about that much, and all of my lines needs to be perpendicular to my center axis. which is that line over here. So it's going to be smaller, and then it will eventually get wider down here. So this line over here, I'm going to make it that long. Just in case, keep it bigger. And afterwards, you can trim the line. You can define where it's going to start and finish. Otherwise, if you try to create a really short line, you might miss the angle. So that angle might not match with this one. What I'm doing over here is by drawing a long line, I'm copying the same body movement and applying here, and then trimming my shape and deciding the width of my cylinder. In the next part, it's going to get smaller here. So maybe the height can be about that much. And again, I'm repeating the same movement down here, drawing a long line, and then deciding its width afterwards. And one more line here. It's okay to draw a couple of lines till you find the perfect line. And then I'm deciding how wide that line is going to be. Alright, so I guess I'm done with the cylinder part. Then I can add some other details. So now my task is to connect those dots. And this part is going to be slightly curved. So I'm going to connect this one with that one with a slight curve, and this is going to be the peak point of my curve. And I'm keeping it light, not dark, okay? And on this one, it's going to be slightly darker than this one. So I can apply more pressure or change the angle of my pen. So now I will apply the same curve on the other side. And this side is going to be slightly darker than this one, since it's facing the right hand side. So you can see the difference. And this part is going to be the darkest. So this part, I'm thinking of adding a little bit small chamfer. And since it's facing down here, it should be dark. And then because of that chamfer, I will have an edge over there. With this part, it should be this wide, and up here it should be that wide. And I will add that raised surface down here. So, and it will appear dark because this container part will cast its shadow on this surface, that little surface down there. Alright. And top part is going to have a small radius. And then it's going to be basically flat. Alright. Other than this container, I'm going to have some air vents. So I'm drawing the bounding box for that air vent and deciding where it's going to start and finish. Make sure that's rectangular. And afterwards, decide how wide each air vent is going to be. Then I'm going to add the radius. Okay, those are the air vents. And maybe I can have a thicker line weight here, because it's a part line which means this is going to be a separate plastic, that's going to be a different plastic, so they can be detachable, and therefore that line has to appear darker. Okay, now the handle part. So make sure that your handle is not out of proportion and it's the right size. So if this part is that big, the handle should be about that long, otherwise you won't be able to carry this heavy part. And the side indicates the length of your handle, and afterwards decide the curve. So it's going to be slightly curved, maybe like something like that. And this part is going to be angled, starting from here, angled towards that direction. Now I will add the details, such as this part is going to be perpendicular to this one. And maybe I might have a nice little radius there. And in this part, I will narrow down my handle so it's easier to grip. And this part could have a slight raised surface so that it doesn't slip from your hand. So since it's a kitchen equipment, you might have wet hands. Therefore, it's nice to have that kind of a little raised surface down there. And I'm going to blend this handle with the body part with a nice little curve. And maybe another radius down here and up here. And I'm going to apply thicker line weight since it's facing downwards. All right, so we are not yet finished. We are going to add some more details to it, such as the button part. So I'm going to trim this top surface where I'm going to place my button. And it's going to be a toggle switch. All right. Yeah, and of course the cord part. We need some power to run this machine. I'm putting a truncated cone. And another one attached to that one. And afterwards, I'm placing the cord. And I can add a few more details. Those small holes so that that part is flexible. What else? We can place a logo here. So I'm going to name it as AIM. You can pick any name that you want. And of course the handles. So the handles needs to be going that same direction as those ones. Right side of those handles are going to be darker. And then some more details down here. So you don't have to add too many lines since it will fade out. Our main focus is going to be this part, so that is why I'm using more lines and thicker lines here and lighter lines down there. Apart from that, they can have some more details up here. see if I can add more details. Otherwise, it seems like we are ready to render our design. And I have my materials ready. So make sure that you have your markers ready and you have a clean desk, because you will move your paper a lot and you don't want other items on your table to block your drawing. And to begin with, I will go over the materials that I will be using. So first of all, the most important, we will be using grayscale markers, which is T1, T3, T5, T7, and black. In addition to those T-scale markers to be used as an underlay color, we will have some colors, which is going to be E43, E44. For this bottom part, it's going to be E44, and the body part is going to be E43. You can pick any other color, but I recommend having a lighter plastic up here and darker plastic down here. And for the switch and some other details, maybe the logo, you can use some nice bright colors like this Chinese orange. And for the background, I'm going to use this Copic Wide, and it's R02. And to add some details in highlights, I'm using white ink pen or correction pen and white pencil. And for the air vent parts, to add some texture to it, I'm using this fiberglass material. You can use any type of material that has texture on it, any type of fabric, to create that air vent part. Okay, so let's start with the cylinder part. That's the most fun part for me. And what I'm going to do is, again, I will analyze my shape, and based on that, I will choose my materials and colors. So as you can see, I'm using thinner line weights here and thicker line weights down there. And moreover, I have metal parts, some little bit metal parts, and some glossy plastic and matte plastic parts. So if the light is coming from left-hand side, which means this part of my hand mixer is going to be brighter than this side. And which means if I have a window over here, I might see that white reflections on this side of the surface, and some random reflections back here, which are darker. Maybe it could be like a water bottle or a black piece of object that will reflect on this side. But this side is going to be definitely lighter, and we will leave some random white lines. And whereas down here for the matte plastic part, the transition is going to be similar to that one, but it's going to be more consistent. The transition is going to be more consistent and softer compared to this one. Okay, so one example is this remote control. So as you can see, the places where the light is hitting from the window, it almost appears white, and the other parts are just black. In some parts it's blended, but in some parts you have this nice white reflection. Whereas on this part over here, I have those buttons that are matte, and as you can see on those parts, the light, the transitions between shades are much more smoother and softer and consistent. Okay. All right. I'm using T3, T5, and T1 as an underlay color for this body part, and I will use a little bit darker colors down here, or maybe more layers. I will start with T3, and don't worry about going over these lines. The consistency of the line is more important. Since it's going to be black, these parts are going to be black, and this part is going to be darker, we can cover our mistakes. So make sure your lines are nice and clean. That's the most important part. So, okay, what I'm imagining is the light is coming from here, and then I have a dark object standing right next to this one, a black object. So I'm going to put that reflection down here. So and the center of that is going to be darker, and maybe this part, and this part on the other side, it's going to be something like that. Before it dries, I'm going to quickly apply T5 to add more contrast to it. So the center of that is going to be very dark, and maybe I'm going to apply some T5 on this side. And then with my T3, I'm going to blend those colors even further. And I will get my T1 and blend this side. And even I can add more contrast and darken this part furthermore. Okay. And down here, since I'm going to use darker color, which is going to be E43, the underlay color has to be darker. So, which means I'm going to have more T5 down here, and the transition is going to be softer. So I'm going to add a couple of layers of T5 on the right hand side, and then with my T3 I will create a softer transition. So I'll soften that color, and it gets brighter right there. And with my T1 I'm going to blend them together. Compared to top one, as you can see, I have softer transition. I'm waiting till it dries because I'm going to add its other details, such as that chamfer part. Since it's a chamfer, which means a straight edge, so it's going to have a sharp edge, and that means my line has to appear sharp. That is why I wait till that marker is dry, and then you will apply your second layer with T5. Because since it's facing downwards, it's going to appear darker than this surface. So it feels dry now, and I'm going to add that small bit over here and darken it. And then for the chamfer part, I'm going to do the same and darken this detail. Okay. Now it's time to use some colors, E43, and render this part. And let's see the results. As I said, I'm imagining that there's a window over here, so I'm going to leave some parts completely white, untouched. And I'm going to apply more layers of E43 on the right hand side. So starting from here. So I'm finishing that up there. And I'm applying more layers. And a few layers there. So I'm applying a few more layers where the dark areas are. Okay. And with my E44, I'm going to render this part. Again, I'm waiting till that E43 part gets dry. And I will go over this edge first, and then the bottom edge. So I will mask those edges and apply my first layer. So this part is going to be darker. I'm applying a couple of layers, and then it will fade out. And this part is going to be also darker. And fade out. So this chamfer part is going to be even darker than those this part. With the pointed part, I'm darkening it further. So don't worry about these parts. We're going to clean them when we're adding our background. And yeah, so now we can render this part. That's going to be metal piece, metal part. And the reflection wise, it's going to be similar to this one over here, but it's going to be much stronger. And I'm going to use similar colors, E4, T5, T3, T1. And I can use the pointed part, starting from here. As you can see, the T3 starts from here, so there's a little bit of gap from its edge. And T5. And a few random lines. Or even I can use some T7, because it's going to reflect that black object standing right next to it like a mirror. And maybe I can blend it further with my T1. I'm using T1 to blend my colors, but there's also another marker called Blender to blend these colors, so I also recommend that. And maybe I will add some T3 where those handles are. Especially on the right hand side. And this small raised surface. And more T5. And a little bit of T7. Okay. So I'm going to do the air vent parts. And it's going to be flat black, so make sure it's dry. And I'm going to use the pointed part. we will wait a little bit, and I'm going to use this one as an underlay material. And I'm going to get my white pencil. Basically, it's a small detail, so any white pencil will work. I'm using the one from this brand, Faber-Castell, but you can get Prismacolor or even Crayolas. And this step is pretty simple. You're just going to place that textured material underneath your paper, and then using your white pencil, you will apply some white texture. So I recommend just doing it everything at once. Don't apply second layer. And once you're done, you can add some small details, such as we can add some shadow right here because light is coming from left-hand side, which means it will cast a small shadow right at the top and on the left-hand side. So again, the more detail that you add, more realistic it will look. So I'm adding that detail. And I guess we are ready to render the handle part. So it's a big, chunky, cylindrical surface, and this is a smaller handle, which means it will slightly cast its shadow on this surface here. And I'm going to do that with T3. And then it will fade out towards the right-hand side. So first I'm masking the areas that I'm going to render. And afterwards, I'm adding some T3 and fading it out towards here. And maybe second layer. And I will get the same T3 color. And I'm waiting till it dries because I want it to have that glossy effect, glossy plastic effect. And I will apply more layers here, and I will even leave some white areas back there. And maybe before adding my E43, I'll add more details. So because it will have some nice little tiny little radiuses down here, which means it will appear darker. Or even, if you like, you can use T5. So maybe we can use T5 right there. So this is T5. And I'm darkening this part even more. Maybe that detail over here as well. All right, so now it's time to apply some E43. Again, first of all, I will go over those edges. And I'll take my paper. and the switch part. I'm going to use this orange. That is why I'm going for a darker shade of T marker, T5. And then I'll render this part. I'm leaving some white areas, which represents those highlights, glare, those radiuses. And this chord part here, first I will render with T7. And it's going to have this matte plastic look. And with black, I'm going to add more contrast. So the parts that are facing downwards, it's going to appear darker. And the chord will fade out. Okay, meanwhile I will go over these edges to create nice crisp look. So we are getting there. And now we can apply some background. So when I'm applying a background, what I'm imagining is I'm imagining as if it's right next to like a pink wall, and which means I will cast the shadow of this product on the wall. To do that, I will use an underlay color, E3 as an underlay color, and I will go over the edges, which is facing bottom right hand corner. And also these parts will also cast some shadow on the wall. Okay, I'll wait till it's dry, and maybe I can cast the shadow of that part, the chord part, on the wall as well. So it's going to be truncated shape, triangular shape, and the chord should have the same curve. Okay, for the background, I'm using Copic Wide. It's basically same as other markers, using the same material, same ink, but it's just wider. It creates a cleaner look. Let's compare those two. As you can see, these have more lines, which will be more distracting. This one had a smaller tip, whereas I'm using Copic Wide on this one. That is why it's much more softer and flat. So you don't have to color the whole thing. You just need a small amount to make this image stand out. And maybe I can extend this area. And apply the second layer. This logo bit can be done with E43. And we will add some final touches to our design. I'm going to start with correction pen and add some glare, especially where the radiuses are. So such as in this top part, it will collect a good amount of light. So I'm going to apply some ink there. And maybe on this corner of this toggle switch, up here as well. A little bit on the surface. And we can apply some white ink on this corner and on this metal part. And a few random lines on this plastic part. I can add some more here. Since it's a matte plastic, the transition is going to be softer. That is why I'm applying a little bit of white pencil on my cord part, so it looks like more like a rubber correction pen. So briefly in this tutorial, what we have learned is with matte plastic parts, the transition will be much softer and consistent, whereas glossy plastic parts will act like a mirror, and it will have some random reflections. And those two parts have to be consistent with each other, which means if the window is on the left-hand side, the both objects left-hand side should be brighter than the right-hand side. And with the metal parts, it's going to have the similar reflection as the glossy plastic part. So that's about it with this tutorial. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me, or you can write down the comment section of this video, and I will try to answer your questions where possible. Okay, have a wonderful day.